Laken Snelling, a 21-year-old former University of Kentucky cheerleader, was arrested after roommates reported loud noises around 4 a.m. The next morning, they discovered that she had given birth alone, then placed the deceased newborn and placenta in a trash bag and hidden them in her closet. She faces charges including abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, and concealing a birth. That's the headline. Cold, stripped to fact. But facts don't capture the sounds. At 4 a.m., silence broke, a gasp, a cry, a thud. Not the kind of noise you can name. Not laughter. Not music. Something raw. Something human. You freeze. Your chest tightens. The air feels wrong, heavy, like the walls themselves are warning you. Every creak, every hum seems louder, sinister. You tell yourself it's nothing. You want it to be nothing. But deep down, something behind that door is tearing reality apart. Because the most terrifying thing isn't always what you see. It's what you hear in the dark, when you can't explain it, when you can't stop it, and when you don't yet realize how deeply it will haunt you. And then there was Laken. She wasn't the shadowy figure you expect in a crime story. She was the image of normalcy, a cheerleader, radiant, fit, smiling on the sidelines of games, wrapped in blue and white uniforms, shaking pom-poms beneath the bright stadium lights. In photographs she glowed, her blonde hair catching the sun, her posture confident, her life seemingly on track. She had a name people recognized, a face people remembered. To neighbors, classmates, and teammates, she was someone who belonged to the light, not the darkness. She laughed, she studied, she posted pictures like any 21-year-old with her life stretched out in front of her. But behind closed doors, behind one locked bedroom door in a quiet apartment that early October morning, the truth was unraveling. A secret months in the making, hidden from almost everyone around her, was finally breaking into reality in the most violent, silent way imaginable. That night, that sound, was not just a moment. It was the fracture point where the world of bright photographs and cheerleading uniforms collided with something grim, something irreversible. And before the sun rose, a life would be gone, and Laken Snelling's carefully built image would collapse into a nightmare no one could ever take back. I've gone back to that night in my mind more times than I can count. 4 o'clock in the morning. A quiet Lexington apartment. One closed door. 3 young women lying awake in their rooms, hearing noises that didn't belong. And behind that single door, a scene that no one could have imagined. It's almost unbearable to picture, but if you want to understand the story, you have to. Laken Snelling was alone. No doctor, no nurse, no comforting hand to guide her through the agony of childbirth. She had kept her pregnancy a secret, from her friends, from her family, maybe even from herself. And now, when the moment came, her body betrayed that secrecy. Labor doesn't wait for privacy. The noises her roommates heard weren't random. They were the sounds of a young woman pushing against the silence, against the pain that tore through her body. A suppressed scream. A muffled sob. A body slamming against the bed frame as another contraction seized her. Think of the fear she must have felt. Every groan threatened to wake the others. Every pang of pain risked discovery. What went through her mind? Shame, panic, denial. The walls of that bedroom became both her prison and her witness. She bled alone, cried alone, and fought to contain what could not be contained. And then, the moment arrived. A newborn's body slipping into the world. For a second, silence. Then, a sound. Was it a cry? A gasp? Or nothing at all? We may never know exactly what happened in those critical minutes, but what we do know is this. When it was over, there was no lullaby, no celebration, no joy. Instead, there was only fear. Fear that the secret was out. Fear that her life was over. Fear that her roommates, just a few feet away, would open her door and see everything. So she made a choice. A choice that would forever change the way her name was remembered. She reached for a trash bag. Black plastic. Thin, ordinary, the kind you use for leftovers or clutter. She placed the newborn inside. Alongside it, the placenta. Tied the knot tight. And then, she hid it. Not in a dumpster far from the apartment. Not in a place no one would ever think to look. She put it in her own closet, tucked away as if she could bury her secret within reach of her own hands. The silence that followed must have been deafening. She must have sat there, trembling, staring at that closet, listening to her own heartbeat hammering against her chest, wondering how long it would stay hidden. But silence doesn't last forever. Secrets, especially ones like this, have a way of leaking through the cracks. Her roommates would wake with questions. Her apartment would reek of something that could not be ignored. And within hours, the life she had lived as a bright cheerleader, as the girl next door, would collapse in on itself. The closet was closed. The bag was tied. But the truth was already loose, crawling through the air, waiting to be found. Morning light should feel safe. It should scatter away the shadows of the night, soften fear, and return normalcy. But in that Lexington apartment, when dawn crept through the blinds, it didn't bring relief. It brought weight. The kind that presses down on your chest before you even rise from bed. Her roommate stirred, but something was off. The air was heavy, thicker than it should have been. A silence hung where there should have been the sound of movement. No footsteps, no bathroom door opening, no familiar shuffle of Laken heading for coffee or her phone. At first, they tried to explain it away. Maybe she'd gone out early. Maybe she wasn't feeling well. But unease has a way of gnawing at you. And then, the smell came. It started faint, like something spoiled. An odor you might blame on leftover food or trash forgotten under the sink. But this wasn't the smell of last night's pizza box or a missed garbage run. It was sharper, heavier, something organic, rotting, impossible to ignore once you breathed it in. One of them finally said what the others were already thinking: "It's coming from her room." That sentence was the crack in the glass. Once it was spoken, there was no going back. They hesitated outside her door, whispering to each other, wondering if they should knock. Their stomachs churned with the kind of dread you can't fully explain, dread that whatever lay behind that door would change everything. When they finally pushed it open, they weren't greeted by chaos. No overturned furniture. No obvious signs of a struggle. Just a room too quiet, too still, with the weight of something hidden pressing in on them. It was the smell that guided them, leading their eyes to the closet. The door was closed, but not latched tight. Something inside seemed wrong. Hands trembled as one of them reached forward, fingers brushing the handle. A silence stretched between them, the kind that makes seconds feel like hours. And then, the door swung open. At first glance, it looked ordinary. Clothes, shoes, boxes stacked in the corner. But in the middle of it all, a black trash bag. Tied, bulging, out of place. The smell hit them harder, forcing one to cover her mouth, another to step back. And still, they knew they had to look. When they pulled at the knot, the world shifted. Inside was not trash. Not clutter. Not something that could be explained away with laughter or excuses. It was a newborn. Still. Silent. Wrapped in the suffocating darkness of that bag. The placenta beside it, proof of a birth that had happened only hours before, hidden just feet from where they slept. Shock is too soft a word for what they felt. One of them screamed. Another backed into the wall, gasping. Their friend, their roommate, the girl who had cheered under stadium lights, had given birth in silence, then placed the evidence of that life into a bag and tucked it into the shadows of her closet. The room spun with horror. Their bodies shook. And yet, even in that moment, a strange numbness lingered. A disbelief that this was real. That this was their reality. They stumbled out of the room, voices breaking, hands fumbling for phones. The police were called. The secret was out. And for Laken Snelling, the door she had tried so hard to keep shut was ripped open forever. When the call went out, dispatchers didn't know what they were sending officers into. The words, "suspicious discovery, possible remains," don't prepare anyone for the reality of a newborn in a closet. Blue and red lights flashed against the Lexington apartment building as police arrived, breaking the quiet of the morning. Neighbors peeked through blinds, whispering questions, none of them prepared for the truth about to ripple through their community. Inside the apartment, the scene was frozen in horror. The roommates stood pale and shaking, their words tumbling over each other as they tried to explain. Officers moved past them, guided by the smell that still clung to the air. And then they saw it, the black bag, tied but sagging, the outline undeniable. No officer ever truly gets used to moments like that. One bent down, gloved hands steady but heart racing, and untied the knot. Inside, The lifeless body of a newborn. Fragile. Small. Wrapped in silence. The room grew heavier. This wasn't just evidence. This was a child. The medical examiner was called. Detectives began photographing, bagging evidence, treating every detail as a thread in a story that needed unraveling. The placenta. The sheets on her bed. The stains on the carpet. Each item, each mark, a silent witness to what had happened in the hours before dawn. But the most chilling detail wasn't in the closet. It was sitting across the room. Laken. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't sobbing or pleading. She was quiet, detached, almost calm, as if she were watching events unfold from the outside, as if this wasn't her story unraveling. When detectives approached her, she didn't bolt. She didn't argue. She sat, answering questions with a soft, almost flat voice. Yes, she had been pregnant. Yes, she had given birth that night. Yes, she had put the baby in the bag. No hysterics. No breakdown. Just admissions, stripped of emotion. And that calmness sent shivers through everyone in the room. Because how could someone so young, so seemingly full of life, confess to something so dark with barely a tremor in her voice? The roommates watched from the corner, torn between fear and disbelief. This was the same girl who had gone to class with them, shared meals, laughed at jokes. And now, she was at the center of a crime scene. The medical examiner confirmed the birth had been recent. Hours at most. But the question that loomed was unbearable. Was the baby born alive? That answer would determine everything. If the child had taken a breath, even for a moment, then Laken's actions were more than concealment. They were fatal. If not, it was still a crime, but a different one. The weight of that truth hung like a blade over the investigation. Detectives pressed her for details. Why hadn't she told anyone? Why hadn't she sought help? Did she panic? Did she intend for the child not to survive? But her answers offered little clarity. She claimed she didn't know what else to do. That she was scared. That it had all happened too fast. Fear, shame, denial. The words circled like vultures around her, but none of them explained the bag in the closet. Outside, word was spreading. Reporters gathered. Parents arrived in tears. What had been a private horror was now a public spectacle. And at the center of it all, Laken Snelling sat in handcuffs, her life as she knew it sealed shut. The charges came swiftly: abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, concealing a birth. Each one carved deeper into her future, each one painting her not as a cheerleader, not as a student, but as a criminal. And yet, the greatest question remained unanswered. Was this the tragic panic of a young woman crushed by fear? Or was it something colder, something darker, a choice that went beyond desperation? The investigation had only just begun. But already, the haunting truth was clear. Nothing about this case was simple. Every true crime story has a moment where people ask the same question. How? How could someone do this? How could a secret this enormous be carried so quietly, so invisibly, until it exploded into horror? With Laken Snelling, that question haunts even louder. Here was a 21-year-old woman, a former cheerleader for the University of Kentucky, the kind of student who looked like she had it all. Outgoing, fit, the girl next door smile, the kind that reassures parents and charms teachers. In every way, she seemed ordinary, perhaps even enviable. And yet, beneath the surface, she had been carrying a secret that reshaped her entire existence. The pregnancy. No one saw it. No one guessed. Her friends claimed she dressed the same, laughed the same, went about her days as if nothing had changed. There were no doctor visits, no prenatal care, no whispers of confession over late-night talks. She held it all inside, a burden wrapped tighter with each passing month. Some would later say she must have been in denial, that she convinced herself it wasn't happening until it was too late. Others argued she knew exactly what was happening and hid it deliberately, terrified of judgment, ashamed of what it would mean for her future. But denial and shame don't erase reality. They only delay it. And when the contractions came, reality tore through the walls of her room in a way she couldn't ignore. Still, even then, she didn't reach for help. Not her roommates down the hall. Not 911. Not anyone. Why? Fear, perhaps. The fear of questions. Who was the father? Why hadn't she told anyone? How could she explain a pregnancy carried in silence? In a world obsessed with appearances, where social media defines worth in curated images, the truth of her situation might have felt like the end of her carefully built identity. Or maybe it was something deeper. A sense of isolation so heavy that even surrounded by people, she felt utterly alone. Psychologists who study neonaticide, the killing or concealment of newborns, often describe a chilling commonality. The mothers are not always monsters, not always driven by cruelty. Often, they are young women paralyzed by secrecy, crushed by shame, trapped in a spiral where they believe silence is safer than confession. But silence can kill. And for Laken, that silence culminated in a decision that would destroy her future. Some people look at her actions and see panic, a moment of terror where rational thought collapsed. Others see something colder, intent, a deliberate choice to erase the evidence of what had happened in the dark of her room. Behind her cheerleader smile, what lived there? Was it a young woman spiraling under the weight of her secret? Or was it something we can't quite put words to, a darkness hidden in plain sight? Her roommates asked themselves that same question again and again. How did they miss it? How did they not notice the changes in her body, the signs of struggle, the weight she must have been carrying? But secrets are strange things. They hide best where no one is looking. The mask she wore was flawless. Until it wasn't. And now, that mask lay shattered, replaced by a mugshot. A face drained of the cheerleader's sparkle, now etched with the gravity of what had been found in her closet. The tragedy of Laken Snelling is not just in what she did, but in how long she lived with a secret that could only end in destruction. Because secrets this heavy don't just fade. They rot. And when they finally surface, they drag everything and everyone down with them.